Okay, at the moment I can't hear anybody in the boardroom. I don't know if that's because you guys are muted.
I believe we are.
Now we can hear you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Barrie Police Service Board meeting, specifically today to review the
You just went on mute again, guys. Can't hear you.
Mayor Lehman.
Yeah, we can hear you again.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Barrie Police Service Board budget meeting today, in which we plan to review the 2022 proposed budget. I'd like to call the meeting to order and begin our meeting in our normal way with the land acknowledgement. The Barrie Police Service acknowledges this sacred land has been the site for human activity for 15,000 years. This land is the territory of the Huron-Wendat and the Anishinaabe Nation. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture. We also recognize the enduring presence of Indigenous peoples on this land and are committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect. Miigwech. Chief Greenwood, if you'd like to begin our meeting, please, with a presentation with respect to our 2022 budget.
Good afternoon. Public expectations, sustainability, and evidence-based delivery of police services, and the increasing financial pressures that we are all experiencing. The City of Barrie Council provided direction to the board through motion 21-G-162 that the city 2022 tax rate increase be capped at 2%, excluding legislative changes and growth-related service level requirements. This presentation will discuss some budgetary challenges expected for 2022, our operating and capital requirements, legislative impacts, and the salaries and benefits over 90%, as we know, are 90% over budget of our budget. We will take us through a thorough look at our staffing plan, our ongoing initiatives, and the Barrie Police Service's role and commitment to the legislative City of Barrie Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan will also be discussed. Policing today brings many challenges that do not have simple solutions. Our community expects our service to embrace new ways of working and to build shared awareness and understanding. The community expects and deserves a police response that protects them from harm, investigates offenses committed, prevents crime from occurring whenever possible, and attending to the social disorder in our city. The requirements to adapt to change never ceases, and keeping up with fundamental changes take financial commitments. There is increased demand on accountability, visibility, legitimacy are just some of those issues. To this end, we have strategically invested in a long-term, evidence-based approach to policing. And as we are aware, Barrie has experienced some very serious incidents this year, whether it be the tornado that struck in our south end, the Superior propane fire, and we had an incident at the Bell Radio Tower event that involved a distressed individual who had climbed to the top. And these incidents serve as good reminders why continued investment in our members, in their training, and in long-term planning and information technology are also very important. There are a few challenges that we're experiencing and are illustrated in our 2022 budget, supporting Ontario's First Responders Act, Next Generation 911, the City of Barrie radio system upgrade, and our significant investment in our information technology software. So we will speak to each of these impacts and of these challenges in more detail as we move through the presentation. We will now spend a few minutes talking about our previously approved multi-year staffing plan and our staffing resources required for 2022. In 2016, the board approved a staffing plan which provided us with authorized strength staffing numbers and our strength from 2017 to 2021. The chart on this slide shows approved staffing strength since 2014. The yellow shows our civilian strength and the blue represents our police strength or our sworn strength. As you can see, the city has, or the service has worked diligently to ensure a slow and sustainable growth model since 2014, despite the growth of the city of Barrie. We have utilized civilianization and strategic gapping of positions to help us achieve this. For the current year, which we are now in, of 2021, we needed to alter our course due to budget restrictions. The approved staffing model plan was essentially put on hold to adhere to the direction of the City of Barrie and the budgetary stance of a 2.65 increase for 2021. So looking at 2021, the board initially approved 4 net new constable positions and a second deputy chief position, bringing our strength to 250 sworn members. However, to assist with the 2021 budget restraints, the 4 new constable positions were strategically gapped, as well as 6 retirement positions were not filled. In total, 10 positions were strategically gapped in the year for 2021, and we remained at our 2020 strength of 118 civilian members and 245 sworn members. So for 2022, to adhere to the City of Barrie budgetary direction and community expectations, we were unable to increase our sworn strength and will remain at 245 sworn members. However, we require 3 additional civilian hires in 2022. These 3 positions include our organizational researcher, a business planner, and our case management coordinator for our body-worn cameras and digital evidence management programs. This will increase our sworn or our civilian strength to 121. So to summarize, our staffing numbers for 2022 will be 245 sworn members and 121 civilian members. These numbers continue to be lower than what was set in our approved staffing plan for 2022. So if we go on to some of the initiatives that we are working on, we continue to analyze and assess these initiatives, such as our COAST program and our Collaborate Barrie situational table. New initiatives will be evidence-based, innovative, and sustainable, and our focus for 2022 will be on case management, body-worn cameras, evidence-based policing research and deployment models, justice modernization, and our responsibilities under the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. If you recall, in 2019, the Ontario government legislated municipalities under the Police Services Act to develop and adopt a community safety and well-being plans, or what we're fondly called our CSW plans. And this was due to be in all municipalities by December the 31st, 2021. Since the introduction of the legislation, the City of Barrie worked tirelessly with multiple organizations, including our service and the board, and the plan was launched by the municipality in June of this year. The plan identifies 15 action items that focus on local issues and guides organizations to work together in new ways to create a safer and healthier city. This slide depicts the 15 action items found in the plan. The 7 items that are identified in the blue represent the actions or projects that the Barrie Police Service is either a lead or a co-lead on. There are 4 items that are highlighted in yellow, and they represent the Barrie Police Service action partners, but we're not a lead on. So in totality, the Barrie Police Service is committed as a lead or a partner on 11 of the 15 items. So some of the examples that I would just like to highlight is the Community Justice Center development, working towards increasing access to mental health services, strengthening the collaborative Barrie situational tables, and implementing the Barrie Health Accord. With some of the recommendations that were put in the plan and some of the work that we were doing through an evidence-based research perspective, we have proposed a community safety and well-being unit as we are merging the community safety unit and our community response unit. And this new unit will be responsible for actioning items specifically pertaining to the plan, working collaboratively with our community partners to identify and address high harm within our community, continue on our established initiatives that I've already spoken about in regards to COAST and Collaborate Barrie, and we will be mobilizing research and creating innovative and effective processes based on evidence of crime and on areas that have the potential to cause harm within our community. We will continue to review alternative response opportunities to ensure that we are utilizing staffing resources as effective and efficiently as possible. Some areas that we will focus on will include utilizing mental health researchers to help establish the criteria to better direct mental health related calls to the appropriate resources, evolving our alternative response unit to reduce the use of our on-road resources. And we will be partnering and have had great discussion with the Ministry of the Attorney General and the Elizabeth Fry Centre in our work on a pre-charge adult diversion program. Now that we have discussed some of our staffing plans, our highlights and challenges for 2022, we will speak to some specific funding dollars required to deliver an effective police service to our growing community. So our salaries, benefits, and overtime complement for our 2022 budget requirement represents 90% of the overall budget, excluding legislative salary cost. Incorporating our strategic gapping, retirements, the 3 new civilian positions, our salaries, benefits, and overtime amount to $53 million. The impact of contractual increases, reclassifications, and promotions have all been reflected in these figures. Most significantly, we had 11 members participate in a 2021 retirement incentive program, and strategic placement of these members will result in an overall budgetary savings for 2022 of $731,000. These savings resulted in the lowest increase to the salaries and benefit portion of the budget that we have seen for over 1 decade. The increase to salaries and benefits cost for 2022 from our 2021 is 0.5%. or a total of $244,000. As a comparison, since 2016, salaries and benefits on average have increased at a $1.7 million from year to year. Without the impact of the retirement incentive program savings, the 2022 budget impact or request would be an annual increase just in the salaries and benefits equal to 4.1% increase. When we look to our operational expenditures, that represents 9.2% increase, or overall percentage of the budget of 9.2% of the request. So our operating expenditures include insurance, gasoline, maintenance, staff development, wellness initiatives, uniforms and equipment, operating supplies, and information or technology infrastructure. So our 2022 budget request has been prepared with an overall strategy to adhere to the City of Barrie's budget tax increases. And by meeting some of the challenges, we have really ensured that we are leveraging our resources effectively, but we must move forward and expand in the use of available software and digital management systems. So as a result, there has been some increases in our expenditure areas. So we are investing significantly in our maintenance area. So that is a 330,000 increase, and that will be looking at purchases of software which enables our members to work off-site as required, and ongoing annual costs for things such as our body-worn cameras. We look at our operating supplies, we've seen an increase there. So there's additional cost involving once again, our body-worn cameras, our conducted energy weapons. Also, we have invested significantly in our wellness of our members, and we have things such as our clinical lead program, our peer support training, and psychological oversight for our members. With the introduction of some of the work around our digital management system, we have had to invest in our telephone systems, and so we've seen an increase in there also. As we're all aware, we are still in the midst of a pandemic, so we have included in this year's budget purchases of PPEs for our members and information technology equipment to ensure that we have appropriate connectivity for our members. We see a slight increase into our insurance, and that's reflective of marketplace costing. So we continue to work closely with the City of Barrie, and we're able to secure best possible rates in regards to that. Another area of our operating budget includes our buildings, and our building costs represent 2% of the overall budget, with a total of $1.2 billion. And our building cost reflects proportional cost of the campus here, and we are charged by the City of Barrie for salaries, benefits of a custodial staff, insurance specific to the building, property maintenance, and utilities for our 4 locations. And so we will see an increase of $200,000 for building costs in comparison to this year, as it is based on the actual costs that we're experiencing in 2021. The final area of our operating cost is the grants, secondments, and other revenues. And for 2022, we see $5.6 million in this area. In 2018, if you recall, all provincial funding grants were reviewed and resulted in significant reductions that we have experienced at the Barrie Police Service. So grant funding for 2022 is 20% lower than the funding received prior to the change in the process that the province has put in place. The programs which have experienced reduction include our court security prisoner transportation grant and the community safety and policing grant, in addition to our RIDE grant. And we anticipate that the funding will remain consistent for 2022. The service also encourages secondment opportunities, and there are currently 8 seconded members working with external agencies such as the Ontario Police College, some of our task force and provincial strategies, as well as the Ministry of the Solicitor General. Recoveries for these secondments total $1.1 million for 2022, which is a decrease of almost 400,000 from what we have received this year. When we look at our general revenue, we have reviewed our historical and anticipated general revenues, which include our sale of assets, criminal records checks, and pay duty administration fees. And we have developed a realistic budget there of $780,000. It is important to note that we have a one-time funding from our health and wellness reserve. It will be used to offset costs associated with the introduction, and I have spoken about our clinical lead, our psychological oversight programs, as we intend to expand on our Project Safeguard program. Our DC funding is the services share of the funding available to offset the costs pertaining to the Next Generation 911 program. So overall, when we look at the city's revenues, grants, and other recoveries, there has been a reduction this year compared to last year of $300,000 or 5%. So when we combine our salaries, benefits, operating expenditures, facilities cost, then subtracting the revenue amounts, we require for our operating budget $54.1 million. As you were aware, the Police Services Act requires that the Police Services Board submits a separate operating budget and a separate capital budget. Keeping in mind with our budgetary restraints for 2022, a decision was made to reduce the transfer of the capital reserve to $1.3 million in 2022 from our $1.6 million that we did for 2021. The services capital budget represents 2.3% of our overall budget. I'll just highlight a few areas in regards to our transfer to capital reserve. So we include for 2022, the replacement of our fleet vehicles, radios, specialized police equipment, information technology equipment, which totals $1.3 million. Along with our commitment to the City of Barrie Astro radio system upgrade with a contribution of $220,000. So when we look at information technology, I spoke about our investment in technology from our operating budget. We are consistent with $450,000 for 21. We're the same for 2022. We made a strategic decision in regards to our radio equipment. So we have started a program in 2014 as we replace our aging radios to ensure that we are at a technological platform that requires our encryption capability. So we had planned to finish this program in 2024, but we have made the decision that we are going to reduce the traditional replacement that we have had year over year by half. So we've identified some savings there. We continue to purchase specialized equipment for our members so they're able to perform their duties, but we did cut that specialized equipment area in half, so we're committing $150,000 there. When you look at the screen, we have identified some slight savings in our fleet compared to last year, so slight savings of $17,000. So once again, when we look at our capital reserve requirement for 2022, it is $1.3 million. As I said, 2.4% of our overall budget. And what I find quite interesting, if we go back 12 years ago to 2010, our capital comprised of 4.4% of our overall budget. So when we look at the transfer to the capital reserve, including the reserve plus our commitment to the Barrie the City of Barrie radio infrastructure of 220, we have $1.6 million. In addition to our capital and operating budget, we have seen some significant legislative items which have a direct impact on our budget request. When we look at our WSIB claims, they have impacted our budget, as we have discussed over the last couple years. And we anticipate in 2022 that there will be cost of $2.5 million, which is an increase of almost $100,000 from this year. As you're aware, the Barrie Police Service, in conjunction with the City of Barrie, we are Schedule 2 employers, which requires that we cover the salaries and benefits are paid by us as the employer, and an adjudication fee is paid to WSIB to administer each claim, and any cost incurred for rehabilitation are billed back to us. And on January 1st of 2021, the service became solely responsible for the funded WSIB claims approved from that date forward. So if we look at 2020, the service does now manage an independent reserve to pay WSIB clawbacks for all claims approved. So included in 2021, we put initial deposit into the reserve of $300,000. The same request is being made for the 2022 budget to enable the service to continue to fund the WSIB fees. As I spoke of at the beginning of our presentation, we have the impact of NextGen 911. As we are required through the CRTC, we're mandated and must have completed our next generation 911 to be fully functional and complete by March of 2023. And our current system or network will be decommissioned by March of 2025. If you look at what we have invested this year of $235,000 is going towards this project, and we will require a financial commitment for 2022 of just over $317,000, and this will cover hardware and software cost. We know that we will likely have to continue to invest in this area, and we'll be required to purchase upgraded commuter equipment in 23 and 24 for NextGen 911. So when we look at the total impact to our service from a legislative perspective, we see a $3.1 million commitment in that area. The next slide is something that we haven't presented in the past, but we know our efforts to maintain an excellent and affordable police service to a growing community with less financial flexibility is both imperative and challenging. This chart illustrates the increasing difficulty that the Barrie Police Service faces in meeting budget targets. So the chart shows the ever-rising population of the City of Barrie since 2011 on one axis, and then on the other axis is the percentage of the Barrie Police Service budget in the City of Barrie's overall budget, and you can see that it is a steady decline. So if you go back to 2011, we comprised 21.5% of the city's budget. And when we look at this year in 2021, we represented 21.8% of the overall municipal budget. So our leadership team has made smart, evidence-based decisions to ensure that our service delivery is exceptional, despite some of the financial pressures, because we believe the key to a healthy and prosperous community starts with community safety. Our 2022 budget would permit us to continue to explore and deliver excellent police services while maintaining our commitment to both our members and our community. So after much consideration, our team has determined that the municipal funding required to provide an adequate and effective police service without significantly impacting the current service level in 2022 comprise of our operating budget of $59.7 $7 million. We know that and have spoken to the grants, the comments, and other revenues and recoveries of $5.6 million. We spoke about our transfer to our capital reserve of $1.3 million, our commitment to the City of Barrie radio system upgrade of $220,000. And then lastly, we spoke to the legislative impact, which is separately tabulated at $3.1 million. So our municipal funding required to effectively serve the community is $58.9 million. This represents an increase from our 2021 budget of 2.88%. I'd like to take a moment to not only thank the board members for this presentation, but to really acknowledge the members of the Barrie Police Service who continue to work tirelessly to assist the people in our community, and those that are sitting at the table through our finance department under the leadership of Nancy Hallis that brought this all together along with our leadership team. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, for your presentation. And I'd like to echo, first of all, before I open it up to questions from the board, to echo your final comments and that to thank yourself and all the leadership team for a job well done to get us to this point. We know the time and effort that has gone into it and the challenges that you have faced to get to this point, and we do appreciate it. So thank you very much. Questions from the board for the chief or the leadership team? Mr. Khan, please.
Thanks, Chair. Just actually through you, or to the mayor. I could have and should have asked you this sooner, but just because it came up through the presentation, round numbers if possible. Mayor, you might have your finger on the pulse in terms of development charges. It's a relatively smaller number, obviously, based on the budget, but it is contributory. Trends in permits and development charges that we anticipate based on current applications and future development. Do we see a trend that might, lead us towards thinking contributory revenue based on the fact that we're obviously halving some of our contributions for the radio fund, et cetera? I'm just wondering if even that small amount might be of assistance projected into next year.
Yeah, I mean, the number is certainly going up in terms of the city's DC revenues, but by memory, and Nancy can correct me, I'm not sure that necessarily translates to a higher amount for the Barrie Police Service, and I think the number's pretty small within our budget, although I'm sure everything counts. Nancy, did you get a forecast from City Finance? Is that what's where the plug comes from for this budget?
Good morning or good afternoon, Mayor. We do have some DC funding that's reflected in our budget request, and that represents a proportional share of our next generation 911 costs, which are allowed under the City of Barrie's bylaw. There are some very specific guidelines as to what would be eligible for funding. And typically where we've received funding is for when we bring on brand new net new positions. We can recover their uniform and equipment costs. We're not doing that in this budget, so therefore there is no DC funding reflected in that regard. But we have included our eligible portion of the NG 911 budget funding dollars, and those are built into this budget already.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? I'll take the opportunity for a couple of questions, if I may. As you mentioned, Chief, in your presentation, this board had a staffing plan in place that flowed through to 2022. And the budget that's being proposed, correct me if I'm wrong, is 5 less sworn officers and 2 less civilians. Where have those positions been gapped if we were to follow the plan that was pre-approved?
So your question is focusing on what would the budget look like if we had the 2 civilian members to meet complement the 5 officers to meet that complement.
Yeah.
What would the cost be? We would be looking at $731,000 that were specific to those salary dollars for those people. So if we look at some of the things that we removed from our operating budget,
Sorry, Chief, everyone has muted in that room. If you could unmute and maybe back up about a minute.
thank you very much. I have turned my mic on. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you very much. We just want to make sure that there's not a lot of noise occurring for everybody. So if we look at specifically the staffing numbers, replacing all of our complement that had been approved in our staffing plan, there would be it would total a 2.5% increase, and that would we would have seen an increase of $731,000 just to the staffing levels. If we were to also include things that we had removed from our original budget, we would also, or we have identified a savings of just over $400,000. So if we were looking at, what would we like to see for the Barrie Police Service for the city of Barrie, we would be looking at a $60 million requirement from the municipality, and that would equal a 5.9% increase of our budget from last year.
Thanks. Thank you, Chief. Any other questions from members of the, Ms. Strong, please.
Just a follow-up to your question, Chair. What are we not doing because we don't have these officers?
So we have made the determination that
Sorry, Chief, the mute button again.
Thank you. It's our virtual meetings. I should know this after 19 months, but thank you very much for the reminder. So we are going to be investing in our civilian component of our complement within our organization, and those positions are operational researcher, our case manager, and so we are focusing in our civilian component, but we are not going to be deploying members. Those 5 sworn members will not be deployed to our city this year. So we're hoping that next year, as in next year budget request, we are going to be looking to replace those 5 members, and they will be deployed to our front line.
Mr. Khan, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Chief. Obviously, the conversation continues. Sorry, I'll remove this if it's okay with you. Yeah. The service over the last 19 months that you alluded to has, like everyone, had to adapt and has embraced the very fast-paced race to get caught up and be able to continue to provide value and service to the community, embracing technology. You highlighted the embracing and adaptation of technology or new technologies in the budget, what you've already done so far. Based on the trends and based on what you see, we're not out of the woods. We see this certainly continuing, if not, this forced change becoming part of our new normal. Words like alternative service delivery model, that type of thing, community safety and well-being, the trends towards perhaps a fewer number of calls for service, but an increase in certain types of calls for service, certainly around mental health, and our ability to provide service maybe through civilians or sworn through alternative service delivery models. How can we, what is your crystal ball telling you? Are we well equipped? Are we are we meeting that test, and do we have demands that we need to be anticipating asking for more of an ask or a different type of ask next year?
I wish I had a crystal ball, but I can say that we have been very adaptable as a service. We've been able to pivot and make some changes. And really, yes, we have embraced technology this year, and we have invested this year, and we will continue to invest next year. But we, through our evidence-based policing research, we're going to look at continuing it alternative models. So one area that I spoke about was our alternative response unit, increasing the ability for our members to take information over the telephone and deploy our resources when necessary to follow up on those calls, but it will be freeing up our officers to respond to emergency calls for service. And we really are focusing on the proactive approach in our community. So we're looking to focus in our high harm areas, high harm individuals, to ensure that we're focusing our resources in the right places at the right time with the right skill.
Thank you, Chief. Chair.
Mayor Lehman, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just in the interest of time, I was going to move the motion if we require one for adoption of the and submission, but I would like to speak to it if there's a minute to do that. I don't have any questions, so if anyone else has questions, I should let that go first.
Any further questions from the board? Mayor Lehman, please. Yes, and I guess the motion should have went first, but we'll do that. We'll get to it.
No, that's okay. We can certainly do questions. So I'll just move adoption of the budget request and submission to the City of Barrie. I'm not sure what our typical wording is, but I guess I'd need a seconder.
So, yeah, I'll read the motion, Mr. Mayor. Motion to approve the Barrie Police Service 2022 budget submission of $58,945,250, which represents a 2.88% increase to be submitted to the City of Barrie Council. Mayor Lehman has moved that. A second to Mr. Khan. Anybody you want to speak to the motion?
Yeah, just the only thing I sort of wanted to add at this point is a growing city is going to require growing resources. We are still in this completely unusual time of the pandemic, and at the same time, in the midst of the beginnings of some systemic changes, I think that will help move some of the work that we are forced to do because nobody else is available to do it to other agencies, and the agencies may well have that capacity in the future. But as I said before, it's a process of building that through the community safety and well-being plan and the health court and other initiatives in our community where we can build that capacity and ultimately allow others to take the lead on some kinds of calls that we don't need to be focusing on, and by doing that, deploy more of our resources towards those that we do. And I think the service has made significant advancement in this year to do so. I think our submission, if we look at the growth rate of the city and the assessment growth that is starting to occur, it's because more people are moving here and our population is growing. And notwithstanding all the numbers right now have to be taken with a grain of salt because of COVID. We will see that growth start to impact the amount of work that's expected of our members and the pressures on the service, let alone the pressures that we know well around this table due to WSIB and other factors. So, I think we're taking a small step back towards the path that the service does need to be on, which is keeping up with growth. And if I've learned one thing in 10 years, it's that council gets into real trouble, and we all get into real trouble in terms of big dollar increases and percentage increases when we leave something alone for too long. We're always better to have incremental increases that keep pace with demand or growth, and I think that's the message that we're giving this year. So I'm quite comfortable with this amount. I'm quite comfortable with justifying where the 0.38 over the 2.5 number is going. And I believe it's going to strategic investments that are going to better our community.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Any other comments from the board?
What he said.
Sounds like a ditto from some here, Mr. Mayor. Then I call the vote on the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. So thank you very much. Our next meeting is October the 21st, and a motion to adjourn our meeting. Mr. Khan, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you again, everybody on the leadership team, the senior management team for a job well done. So thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you very much for your support, everybody.